This meeting of the Tyler ISD Board of Trustees is called to order. We do have a quorum. The meeting has been duly called, and the notice of the meeting is posted in the time and manner required. First, we have public participation, and I don't think anybody showed up. Dadgummit. Okay, we have a public hearing on Texas Performance Reporting System, TAPER system, and we have a presentation by the staff.
Okay, Dr. Curidan and Ms. Dykeman will be providing today's presentation on the TAPER and the RDA. TAPER, formerly known as AEIS, and then RDA, formerly known as PBMAS, okay? So this is your end of the year conglomeration of all of your different data points that has been presented to the board and the public and is usually available through public information anyways. So we're going to turn it over to y'all to go over last year's TAPER and RDA. Dr. Curidan.
Thank you, Dr. Crawford. Good morning to the board, Dr. Crawford, and thank you for giving us a chance to work through and present some of the data that Dr. Crawford mentioned. So we'll just jump right into it and start going through some of the data. The first one we're going to talk about is our TPRS, which is the Texas Performance Reporting System, used to be TAPER. Essentially, it's just a big conglomerate of all the data that TA disaggregates for us. And so some of the highlighted points that we're going to talk about and really kind of the big subject areas for TAPER, we put up there, but there's STAR performance and growth, which we presented back, I believe, in August or July, attendance rates, dropout graduation rates, and then even college career military readiness. So this is just an updated kind of summary of how we performed relative to the state on our STAR scores. You can see it's pretty similar to what we presented back in August. In math, we outperformed the state in most cases. In science and social studies, we were pretty much right there with the state. And in reading, we were a little bit behind, but not far off. So no surprises here. This should look just like what we presented back in August. I do want to point out there were no distinction designations and there were no accountability ratings awarded in for the 2021 school year.
Across the state?
Across the state,
Okay.
correct. So just as a brief history, there's our ratings for 2018, 2019. The last 2 years, we have not received a rating because of COVID. We do expect to receive ratings this school year in 2022. We came in at about 76% economically disadvantaged, which is, you can see, substantially higher than the state. And one thing we want to point out is even though we have a higher economically disadvantaged population, we also have a better attendance rate than the state had. So, and that's for 1920. It always lags a little bit because of all the auditing done, but it's always something to be proud of in that particular case. If we look at graduation and dropout rates, you can see that dropout rates for our middle schoolers, dropout rates for our high schoolers, they're lower than the state. Our 4-, 5-, and 6-year graduation rates are higher. And just as a reminder, a 4-year graduation rate, that would be like our students that were supposed to graduate with their cohort. Our 5-year graduates, those are students that were going to graduate with their cohort plus 1 year, so essentially giving them an extra year to graduate. And then our 6-year is essentially giving those students 2 extra years to graduate. And when we give them 2 extra years, we graduated about 98% of our kids, which is better than the state average at 93%, or 92.6. And again, we put that percent of economically disadvantaged graduates up there just to show you we're graduating students at a higher rate, and we're graduating a larger percent of economically disadvantaged students than the state is. So it's something to be proud of, in particular for our district. We covered CCMR a little bit with accountability, and I know Mr. Brown gets up here and talks about it as well, but I just wanted to point out some of the things that we've discussed in the past with where we're performing relative to the state. Our CCMR rate for last year was higher, as well as you can see the percent of students that have dual course credit. You can see the percent of students that have industry-based certifications. We actually about doubled the state average, which is pretty remarkable. You can see what percent of our students have CTE, coherent sequence coursework. And then you can also see how our students are doing on AP results and then some other dual course credit measures. So we're doing pretty well with CCMR. We're outpacing the state, and it's not just due to one area, it's due to performance across several different CCMR measures. So that's kind of it for TPRS taper. We're going to now kind of shift gears and jump into RDA, which is our results-driven accountability. It's a little bit of a different focus with RDA than TPRS is. TPRS is just reporting data, whereas RDA is like a data monitoring system that TEA uses they essentially look at several different indicators for these three program areas: bilingual, ESL, they look at special ed, and then they look at other special populations, which was kind of a conglomerate of Title I and then CTC or CTE students. For all the different indicators that they evaluate, they can assign performance levels from 0 to 4. For all indicators, it's kind of counterintuitive, but we want to be at a performance level 0. So in a perfect world, every indicator would be at a performance level 0. Performance level 4 is kind of the furthest away from where we want to be. Just to provide you some idea of how we were scored on various indicators, there were a lot more indicators assigned this year because we actually were able to take STAR last year. So if you go back and look at 2019-20 when we didn't have STAR, this chart would look completely different because there were not many indicators measured without the STAR test. But once we took STAR, this is how we scored. You can see the majority of our indicators were scored in performance levels 0 and 1, which again is where we want to be. We had a few indicators at the 2, 3 level, and then we had one indicator at performance level 4, which is a significant disproportionality. And so you can see the averages for the different performance levels and how we did. I do want to point out that for special ed and for our other special populations, we're at what's called the needs assistance determination level. So this is based on the distribution of scores and how we did in performance level 3, performance level 4. In terms of what it means for those different populations, for our bilingual and our other special populations, when we're at needs assistance, essentially we're just trying to continuously improve and continuously monitor those populations to make sure that they are improving. So we don't have to submit any type of plan. We're essentially monitoring them to try to make sure that we're making gains to improve the performance level. Special ed's a little different. With needs assistance, it's the same thing, but we also have to submit a strategic support plan, which I believe was submitted December. So we've taken care of that and are now kind of continuously monitoring and looking for improvement in the different indicators on RDA. And with that, we'll take any questions you may have.
Anybody have any questions? Is the
go ahead.
On the, you know, we see these 3 and 4s and even the 2s, most of them are special ed. Is that common throughout the state, other districts? I mean, is this typically the area where you're showing those?
Yeah, it's a great question. We don't have there's not like a state norm per se, but generally, you know, I would expect that that's where we're going to see a larger chunk of our higher performance levels, you know, the 3s and the 4s. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
Just many of them are tied to the academic performance, and so with COVID, you know, the special education students have their gaps as well as general education students.
Yeah.
A question regarding the second page, I think the third page, on the STAR scores. Just wondering, the negative 13 for the 7th graders, is there any indication of why it's negative 13 compared to all the others?
Yes, sir. So that's our, 7th grade math is always tricky. Middle school math in general is tricky because students don't always take the grade that they're enrolled in. So that 7th grade group is going to include some 7th graders, but a lot of our other 7th graders are taking 8th grade math and Algebra 1, which is different per se from how the rest of the state does it.
Okay.
So that number is not a true measure like it is for, say, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, where it's comparing 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders' performance to the rest of the state. With 7th grade, you're really looking at the students that are just taking 7th grade math, which is not all 7th graders. It's a very small subset of those 7th graders that are taking math, that are taking 7th grade math. a large number of those students are taking 8th grade math as well as Algebra 1 in any given year.
So a lot of the seventh graders who could carry you there are not taking the test because they're taking eighth grade.
Correct. They're essentially taking an accelerated math course at that point.
So they don't have to take it even though they're in 7th grade?
Correct, yes, sir. So they're receiving, it's whatever instruction they're receiving. So if they're a 7th grader, but they're receiving 8th grade math instruction, they take the 8th grade math STAR test. If they're receiving Algebra 1 instruction, they take the Algebra 1 EOC, even if they're in 7th grade.
So the ones that's in the 7th grade are having a problem?
The ones that are in 7th grade
That's
math,
taking
yes,
the
that's a
test.
score, that's a reflection of just their score.
Right.
Correct. So not a score of all enrolled 7th graders.
So do we have a plan to improve those individuals that's taking the 7th grade test that's in the 7th grade?
I think so. You know, I don't want to jump too far, but I know there's been some talk of looking at some other options to try to improve those scores going into next year, some realignment and things like that. So I'm sure Dr. Hansen could speak to it a little better than I, but I know there's some looking at the curriculum and some other things to see what we could do to improve that.
Okay.
Also, some staffing considerations on that, Mr. Newsom. It seems like we got a little bit of a problem to where we've got when staff not targeted right there at the, maybe more novice staff. In other words, when they come in, you might have your, I'm gonna say maybe your more experienced teachers, your higher performing teachers are teaching that 8th grade set of math standards. We just need to improve a tier 1 instruction in 7th grade, and then maybe your 6th grade, since it's the first time in middle school math, you've kind of got that. So we've got some staffing considerations we need to make in regard to improving 7th grade instruction.
Okay, so we're working on that, yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The board, we've got our PEMS data in for the fall semester. Economically disadvantaged is up to 78% for this year. And then I've got a comment to make, and maybe you can describe this, Dr. Curitan. Future graduation rate computation. Kind of stumbled across that. So the state's changed that, correct?
Correct, yeah. And there's two different calculations, right? So there's the state's rate, and then there's the federal rate that the state uses for accountability. So with the state rate, it's essentially kind of like we would calculate it, right? So how many students did we have here that we were responsible for, and then how many graduated? The catch is with the state, we're allowed to remove students that choose to stay essentially like another year. So our continuers, I think is if I'm using the right term, for our continuers and our workforce students, is it? Workforce, yeah, work-based students. So those students wouldn't hurt us in the graduation rate, whereas with the federal graduation rate, there's no exception. So if a student was supposed to graduate in 2021 and did not graduate for any reason, they are considered a non-graduate. And so we have to look at both. It's hard to get that data in a timely manner because students can leave and unenroll. They can unenroll from our district and then enroll so much later at another district before we ever find out about it. And so we think of them as dropouts, and they're not dropouts. It's really tricky. It's very hard to calculate graduation rate before the state releases that data.
On this taper, though, in regard to how we used to do graduation rate, when they used to break it out in the old, not taper, trips, whatever they're calling it now, TRPS, the old taper, the old AEIS, you just break out graduation rates. Is that harder to find now? Because they're breaking it out now per college-ready graduates, distinction graduates, et cetera, correct?
Yeah, you can get it any way you want it.
Yeah, okay.
The closest to what you're referring to is going to be probably the 4-year graduation rate. That's probably the closest that they're going to give you, but they'll let you disaggregate the data into anything you want to see for the most part.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have another question on graduation rates. We noticed that ours is higher in TISD than for the state for the 4-, 5-, and 6-year graduation rates. Is there an explanation for that?
You know, it's a good question. I don't know if there's a single explanation. I think it's just a lot of dedication to the high schools to keep students there keep them enrolled, and essentially get students graduate. RISE is a nice alternative to keep students that may not have graduated, and keep students enrolled and get them graduated due to some unique circumstances. So that may play a part in it, but I think a lot of it's just keeping students enrolled, as well as we can, and getting them graduated. But as long as I've been looking at this state, I feel like we have been right there at the state or outperform the state year after year.
Yeah, I think some of those inputs that you're describing are relational. Just the type of people we've got in our school system that if you start talking about the constituent services department, making sure that we're getting kids back to school who are having attendance problems, our campus level staff that are developing solid relationships to kids to keep them inspired and to have agency inside their school. I don't know if there's really a cause and effect on that, but if you start thinking about the inputs versus what you're seeing on the outputs, I think we can be pretty pleased with that, and that is, I think, due to where we live and the type of people that are employed here in Tyler ISD, that our kid have a relationship with an adult that keeps them inspired and engaged. At least that's our hope, and the data's matching that, I hope. On CCMR, what are your thoughts as a research and accountability guy on early college high school's impact on our CCMR pace as compared to the state?
So our CCMR rate at early college is pretty much at 100%. Because even, I think it's 100% almost exclusively due to our associate's degrees, but if we don't have a student that misses an associate's degree by one course, for a semester or something like that, they get it through dual credit. So we're definitely outpacing the state there collectively, from the early college perspective. And from our district, it certainly helps, but I don't think it's something that carries us. I think it's a nice supplement to what we've been doing, but even before we had early college as a separate institution, we were right there doing well with the state. So I think it's just another nice piece to what the district's doing, and helping the district outpace the state
Part
while
of
not
it.
carrying us.
Probably another hypothesis I'd have would be with TJC in our backyard, having that community college that's a flagship partner for us as compared to maybe other school systems inside of their taxing jurisdiction. I do believe that's playing on that as well. So, and you start talking about things like the Tyler Promise that's available for our kiddos once they get in and start taking some dual credit. It doesn't take as long to get that associate's degree. So I think pretty good little dual credit opportunity here. And our AP scores are still outperforming state. Mr. Brown's presented on this as well, that the 3s, 4s, and 5s that we have is really adding to that as well, I believe. Tell anything about military readiness that I know they had a little change up on how they computate that. How much impact is that? Just not much at all, is it?
No, it's right now they're basically treating it as obsolete. They don't want districts to report that data anymore. They want to collect it straight from the Department of Defense, and the Department of Defense is not releasing it. So to this point, they seem to think they'll still get it at some point. So right now, it's basically college and career readiness is really what it is.
Ms. Dykeman, on special ed, we know that the ghost cap, there was no cap, but there really was a cap. That's kind of been alleviated. So do you think an increase in our numbers, truly identifying the kids that are out there for special ed services, impacts some of the data that was presented on the RDA as well? In other words, they weren't formally labeled as special ed, but now they are. Could that be some of that as well?
I think it is an impact, but it also, now we have the opportunity to serve those students a little stronger.
Sure.
And hopefully get them to improve their academic performance, so.
But as far as dinging your RDA on different things like behaviors, those would normally just be caught up in Chapter 37 data as far as discipline goes. Now it's actually Chapter 37 data and RDA, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. 'Cause the
Okay.
numbers are definitely higher.
So if those numbers have gone up, the special ed numbers have gone up, then you're likely with students with behavior issues could potentially causing inflation of that until we can get a better grasp of it. And
Yes, that's
okay.
correct.
All right.
Any other comments or questions? You know, it seems to me like we're really good at sticking with kids, getting them across the finish line. We're really good at the extra programs we have, you know, our AP numbers and our college and career readiness, and it's just like the work needs to be done on our on-level stuff, you know, getting the basics good. And I know it's a battle we'll continue to fight, but I am proud of when we decide to do something a little extra that we do it well. And and I'm proud of the community and our staff for getting kids across the stage and not giving up on them. I think it speaks to our community.
It's a pretty
and people
good
there.
observation, I think. There's been so much attention because we used to have so many issues as far as accountability goes in our our elementary school grades. And even our data is not awesome. It's improving.
Right.
But we are getting the kids across the finish line. So that means they are becoming academically prepared enough to take the state's exit exam to walk across the stage. I think we've failed to talk about the good things that are happening. Whenever you start, you know, you're always focused on that. And so I think we're kind of saying the same thing there, that these are the same kiddos that if they might have had some struggles in our formerly IR campuses at elementary or at middle, they're getting across the stage appropriately as certified by the state and being able to pass their exit exam. So, you know, we're going to continue to work on what we need to work, because if we're a pretty good school district with those if that's what it's about, is getting kids out of here, workforce ready, college ready, pretty good school system. Our data shows that we're outpacing the state in some of those areas. If we can improve our elementary performances and get them ready, we'll be a great school system. That's kind of the theory behind that.
Well, good deal. Thank you for your presentation. Okay. Opportunity for public and board comments, where nobody in the public wants to comment. Result-driven accountability for did we just do that?
We did.
Was
We had
that,
already
was
had.
that coupled in there? Okay. ESSER 3 grant funds update is what we have next.
Yeah, we have an opportunity here to present to the board our ESSER 3 grant funding update. It was requested by a trustee to have this presented to the board or provided to the board. So we just thought we'd take this opportunity to kind of recap where we're at 6 months later, as we presented this back in as early as April, I believe, or maybe even before, about what we're anticipating, and then turn it over to Tasha Bjork, our Assistant Superintendent and CFO, to our Deputy Superintendent and CFO, to present the ESSER 3 grant funds update.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Joseph, would you pull up I wanted to show you our website. We have a link to all the ESSER information. If you ever want to look at it, we keep it updated. It's right under the menu, and there's a tab for ESSER. Is it hung? Okay. So if you'll just kind of scroll down that and let them see what's available. It has the purpose, and then we have the requirements, and then the survey, if you'll stop right there. This was the survey that we received, and as you can tell, the two main places that they saw as priorities were increased staffing and technology. Those were the largest areas. And in our budget that we have for ESSER, 43% of it is salaries. And of that 43%, it's 150 positions. And the majority of them are school-related. There are some central positions that serve the campuses, but that's like 27, and they're the SEL counselors, extra nurses, that type of thing. And then as far as technology, we budgeted about 35%. That's for the one-to-one devices and for teachers and students, and also replacing the smart boards district-wide. So we have stuck to the priorities that were prioritized in the survey. And then another 10% of the budget is a reimbursement to the general fund for indirect costs, like any work that we do in central office, it reimburses us for that. For like all the payroll we do, the bills we pay, that type of thing. And that's standard in grants. We get a reimbursement from the grant to help fund our expenses at central office. So that's about 88% of it. And then the rest is instructional supplements like software, and then we have some like curriculum, that type of thing, and some transportation in there for summer. So that's basically how we spent the money. And then we have, and I think you have it in your packet more detailed, but and Joseph, do you have this? Right, so that's a detail of it. And then we also have in your packet a listing of the positions by campus. Any questions?
Questions. You said that you surveyed the community to get the priorities as far as staffing and technology. Mm-hmm. Okay. How did you go about doing that?
The survey?
Yes.
We sent it out. I may need help from Jennifer on this. Well, who we sent it to and that type of thing.
Yeah, it was.
All the students? And they set priorities on their response?
Yeah, it went out. I remember filling it out. It went out via whatever avenue y'all sent it, email and text.
It was sent out via email, and they had a bunch of different options to choose from. There was also a section where they could put whatever they thought it should go to if that was not listed. There were several areas listed.
Okay. The reason I asked is just a concern about the kids that were already behind prior to COVID and where they are right now, and looking at the emphasis that we're putting on those particular individuals as a district, when we have additional funds that we could possibly use to target those individuals, and targeting those individuals to get them up to where they should be, since they were behind before COVID. You know, they dropped farther behind. So I was wondering if there are any funding that we targeted at those particular individuals, or the block of students that actually were behind in that aspect.
What we have on this position list, the campus reading specialist,
Mm-hmm.
that's direct instruction of the students that are behind. And also we have some math interventionist, a district one, and then some at one or two of the campuses.
Okay. Well, I see that, but I can't, just looking at that, I couldn't tell if one school was having more of a problem than the other based on the distribution of staffing. So, you know, my anticipation would be see that there are a little bit more concentrated staffing on those campuses that were having problems, as opposed to it being, look like, kind of equally distributed. I was saying, my thought was more emphasis on those. Huh?
A lot of these are J-Pro, and also the Tier 2 campuses.
Okay.
The next one's in line.
Yeah, we tiered them, tier
Yeah, we
one, tier
tiered.
two, tier three, and we did present to the board, I believe, at
Yes.
one time in regard to what those tiered campuses were. And what those tiered campuses were, you received additional support, resources at those tiered campuses. In other words, tier three, J Row, which would have been Jack, Rice, Owens, and Woods, did not receive the same resources as J Pro, which is Jack, Austin, Pete, Ramey, and Orr.
Right.
What'd I say? Jones, excuse me. There's two J's.
And the tier 1 and 2 also received additional teacher positions and a campus reading specialist and an instructional aide
Okay.
to
But-
go with that person.
Okay, but looking at the ESSER funds, which are primarily can be used to supplement anything associated with COVID, general understanding, we could use funds from that to increase that number, even though we've already added additional staff. Would it be possible to use ESSER funds to increase the number of individuals on those campuses that are falling behind?
We would have to cut them elsewhere. We've pretty much budgeted up all the ESSER money.
Why would you have to cut them elsewhere?
Well, if we're going to add them somewhere else, we've already budgeted the whole $44 million
Okay,
with positions, technology, and the curriculum. So if we
Okay.
wanted to add extra positions in ESSER, we would need to find a place to cut some positions.
right. But we have our other funds that we use to do the same thing, and ESSA was extra. So my thought was that that could be used to supplement those campuses that were already behind, since we're not doing that in our regular budget. You said we do 1, 2, and 3 tier, they get additional staffing, but even with the additional staffing, we're still having problems with those kids academically, based on the report we're gonna get a little bit later. So I was saying, is it possible that we look at putting more staffing or better staffing, because we talked about that, on those particular campuses, so those kids can actually improve from where they are right now? You know, since we have the funding, I was just trying to figure out a way that we can make a difference on those particular campuses, maybe a little bit better than what we've already done.
Well, what other funding are you referring to?
Well, we have general funding. You said we did
Right,
additional
and we've budgeted
funds
that
for tier
way to.
1, 2, and 3.
Right.
They were funded differently. Okay. So I was thinking that since we had ESSA funds, that we could possibly fund them differently as well, by looking at the tier level and giving 1, 2, and 3 different levels
And
of
I think if I'm
assistance.
understanding you correctly, you're saying let's spend money on these tier 3 in general fund, but we can't reduce the amount that we spend in general fund and on these schools that are at risk. We have to spend the same amount there. So if what I'm understanding, you're saying, well, let's don't fund some of the things for like the high schools and push that into general fund? Because to spend more on these campuses, we will have to cut some of these other positions.
Okay,
We had our normal budget
Mhm.
that we normally have.
right.
ESSER's additional to
Right.
be spent on a wide variety of things for COVID response, including learning loss. Substitute teachers, we gave super subs to a lot of campuses. I think each campus got a super sub on the top right. That cost some money.
That's at 46.
So that was another thing, is we wanted to make sure that we had, that was another issue, and we're kind of experiencing that again with a little spike. So we had to have enough staff to actually, so people to cover the classes. But when we started developing this plan, you had tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 to distribute the ESSER funds.
Right.
So that's where they're getting their additional funds, is the ESSER funds is through those tiers based upon their performance and their risk load in their communities. So tier 1 received more ESSER support than tier 3 did.
Okay,
So they're already getting additional support at tier 1 as compared to their tier 3 peers.
well, I couldn't tell that by looking at the positions that, on this sheet. I couldn't tell that they got more funds, just from looking at that. And that's why.
Like
I
campus
raised the
reading
question.
specialists, I see
The
Austin,
campus
Bell, Bonner, Bolter, Clarkston, Dixie, Douglas, Griffin, Hogg, Jones, or Pete, Ramey.
Instructional
Those are-
aides
Those are
also.
tier 1 and 2 campuses.
Instructional aides, you'll see the very same, because there was an aide that went with each reading
So
specialist.
instructional aid, I see Austin, Bell, Bonner, Bolter, Clarkston, Dixie, Douglas, Griffin, Jones, or Pete, Ramey.
The middle school math intervention Bolter. right under that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because those were the ones that they received extra. And a teacher.
Okay. Thank you. I'll just review it and follow up with questions if I need it.
Okay, anybody else have any questions or comments?
One more addition to that, the departmental positions, you talked about the SEL counselors, there's 4.
Well,
Where are
we
they
also-
distributed at?
We have 8. We recently changed, there's 4 licensed LPCs
Oh, okay, yeah,
and 4 SEL.
yeah. And those, the distribution of those are towards the Tier 1 and Tier 2 campuses,
I would,
with some influence with Tier 3?
Yes, that is absolutely correct.
Because there are behavior issues at other parts of the district as well that does have pockets of risk load.
Yes, the focus is.
I mean, just because of where they're located in our city, I mean, certainly risk loads matter, the census blocks, but then we have pockets to where we've got some behavior issues that need some treatment as well, because there is pockets of poverty at other campuses as well.
That's correct.
Okay. But we're targeting J-Pro and then Tier 2.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Those won't show up on the left side, correct? You're talking about your LPCs and your SEL counselor.
they're down on the.
We consider those district-wide, but they
move.
Right, they
They
move
go
around.
from school
Okay.
to school. All these
might
pretty
have a
much.
cluster to be responsible for.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you for that ESSER report. Okay, safety and security update.
Yeah, board monitoring calendar, we've got Agent Jeff Millslagle, Director of Safety and Security, will provide your quarterly safety and security update? Semi-annual, there you go, okay.
Good morning and Happy New Year, Board and Dr. Crawford, Ms. Orr.
Morning.
Last time I saw all of you was right before school started, and a lot of things have happened in the last 6 months. So I'm going to go over the highlights and then where we're going. So the first thing we did was we installed outdoor early warning systems for lightning, and they do work. Last Saturday morning, I happened to be outside, and one of them went off at Legacy, and you can hear it for about a half a mile away. So they really work well. We're also looking into putting one at the CTC at the pool, which is another
I
area.
have a quick question on the lightning monitors. Do those function after dark?
24/7.
Okay, so in theory, let's say a neighborhood school, midnight, you're gonna hear it?
Yes, we might wake some of the neighbors up.
Huh.
You cannot do it on an hourly time basis. It's 24/7, and a number of us coaches, law enforcement, myself, are notified if it goes off anywhere in the district. Your phone goes off also.
If there's a vendor watching, and you can do that,
Let me know.
let us know.
Let us know. Hopefully, we haven't had any complaints yet.
How far is the lightning warning?
1 mile radius.
1 mile?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, if it's within 1 mile, then it'll probably wake somebody up. Anyway.
I will keep you posted. You guys authorized bus cameras, new servers. They started working on those in November. Over the December break, they started adding more personnel, the vendor did, to add more cameras on. We're up to 14 as of January the 3rd, 108 cameras installed, and 300 cameras have come in the last week, and they're ready to install those. So it's a rolling out process, hoping to get 10 to 15 buses per week. And so hopefully by spring break thereabouts, we should be finished and all up online. Hopefully you will notice out back, when you come to the board meeting, the new lighting project has been done out there, and it's well lit. It has LED lights instead of the old incandescent orange lights when you go out to your cars. So That was a great thing. We've have 5 golf cars that have been delivered, 2 to each high school and 2 to Mike Carter Field and Rose Stadium. I'm working with athletics to clean out a little spot so we keep those nice vehicles indoors and out of the weather and out of sight of anybody that might want to remove them from our premises.
Security utility vehicles.
Security utility vehicles, yes, sir.
Yeah, not golf carts.
Cars.
And those are for outdoor use?
They're for outdoor
For
use.
use.
No assistant principals riding in the halls of the school?
No, looking at segues for those, but probably not going to do it. But no, these are for outside, monitoring the perimeter and the parking lots.
And they're very nice, and they get the guys around
Yeah.
rather quickly. We had an incident at St. Louis. Some people decided to come in at night and remove some catalytic converters. So we've added gates over there, and they're card access gates, and so the perimeter is all secured now. I'm happy to announce that I have an addition to my staff, Dave Goodson. Dave, would you please stand? Dave is my Deputy Director of Safety and Security, and we're adding one more in February. Both these guys I've worked with, have known for many years, and they come from the FBI here in town. We held a workshop, of which 2 of you attended. We do it 3 times a year. We met, we got down in the weeds, what was going on in safety and security in executive session, and that was very positive. We have outside people that come in from the community, and parents, teachers, board members, and we all gave our reports back in November. For the past year plus, I've been working with the City of Tyler traffic engineer on our school zones. And in December, on the 7th and the 14th, I went before the traffic board and we redrew all the school zones. The City of Tyler is calling that Phase 1, but it was mostly Tyler ISD. And yesterday at 9 o'clock, it was presented to the City Council and approved 7-0 to redraw the school zones. And I'm happy to announce we have a new one at Hubbard Drive that people have been wanting for many, many, many years.
Taking a while.
It takes a while.
Hey,
So-
Mr. or Agent Millslagle, I hate calling you Mr. I love calling you Agent. Describe a little bit about Tyler High, the loop, and what that process has looked like. Then I might provide some commentary at a different point in time.
For many, many years, Tyler High has been a problem with the kids and the adults picking the kids up and leaving. They like to cross the loop at the north entrance to across the loop. The loop is controlled by TxDOT. We have had meetings with the city, with TxDOT, Tyler ISD. We've flown a drone over the loop to show 50 to 60 kids per day attempt to cross the loop there. It is the #1 traffic hazard, probably in Tyler, for pedestrians. So the city wrote up a proposal, sent it to TxDOT. It was denied. We got together with the city to say, hey, is there another way? Because there's a crossing there at Lions Drive, and then you go all the way up to 110. Is there a way we can put a stoplight there that's green all the time until a child or a pedestrian hits the button and it slows down? TxDOT said no. However, there's some federal rules that say this is a possibility. They have rewritten TxDOT. They've done the study. We've checked all the boxes that say a city can basically override TxDOT. So the city traffic engineer is working on that. We're hand in hand with them and totally support that proposal to put a pedestrian crossing stoplight there that's green each way until someone comes up and hits it. But there are some rules and regulations due to the speed of the loop and the length or where you locate it between each stoplight at Lions Drive and up at 110.
Yeah, Dr. McKellar brought it up yesterday at City Council. I know there's the light at Lions Drive, but really, if you hit that light at Lions Drive, it only serves the apartments that are right across the street there.
That's
Pine-
correct.
What are those, Rojo, you remember? I can't remember.
Used to be called Tyler Square back in the day.
Yeah, but haven't they changed those though?
Yes, they changed it.
The name, I mean, they always change the LLC, change. So it doesn't make any sense for the layperson to say, well, you've already got one there, because all of our kiddos that walk north. And so that's the reason that we're having an issue here. Very disappointed in TxDOT not approving this. So I'll talk about some stuff at a different time about what we're going to do to remediate that issue here pretty shortly. We're going to do some stuff take it into our own hands until we get slapped on the hand. Okay.
So, moving on, if you have any questions about what we've
I'd
done.
like to say, I appreciate that, because I do get that all the time about that crossing and what we're doing about it. And to hear what you reported is very good. I've suggested that individuals take an active role by writing their representatives and senators and addressing the issue directly with them, because they do kind of control TxDOT at times. So I've been trying to get them to do that, but hey, anything we can get is better than nothing at all. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. As we move forward in the future, what we're looking to do, and it's on the next slide, and this happened yesterday, so it was approved by the city council. One of the things we're doing with the city is also integrating, they have a geo map system of the city, and we're trying to overlay that on our bus routes. And that involves sex offenders, because we certainly don't want a bus dropping a child off at the driveway of a registered sex offender here in the city. So working on that. Pending board approval, we would like to install the smart detectors in our campuses. As soon as Dave kind of stops drinking from the fire hose that he's been getting the last 8 days, and our new employee comes on board, we're going to update the 2 high schools' school safety audits. I've done them, they're pending, but the fields weren't finished, and I don't like to do an unfinished product, and it'll give them a good view of the new high schools and what we do every 3 years, because we're in the window that started January the 1st. Something was added. Police management of the high school zone, that's what we talked about, and pending a crosswalk. Those are 2 things that were added, not to the slide that I had. So the next thing I'd like to go over real quick is the school safety threat assessments. They're required. We turned them in November. We went above and beyond. We did the next year's one this year because we have Crisis Go, and thank you for funding that. What we're going to do is add this next year our elementary schools, because unfortunately we're doing threat assessments at the elementary level, which we had not seen before in my tenure here in the last couple of years, but we've had them as low as 2nd grade now. And there's an increase in these. Why that is, I don't have an answer to that. I've been working with Lori Anderson and Ms. Dykeman's office and trying to figure out why are they getting younger. But we're seeing an increase in that, and we're going to address it with Crisis Go and make sure it's done correctly, that we address it immediately. And it's worked out really well between my office of security and the police department and Ms. Dykeman's office. So, any other questions as we go forward?
I don't think so. Appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, well, we are now going to go into executive session, and hopefully with a little action to follow. All right. Okay, do I have a second? Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. And that concludes our meeting. I will have a motion for adjournment.
I move that this meeting be adjourned.
Do I have a second? A second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. This meeting is adjourned.